Tonight, a funding slam. The state government defends a multi-billion-dollar bailout to secure the Australian Open. Also tonight, Proud Mary. Australians and Danes rejoice as Queen Mary ascends the throne. A frosty reception as the starting gun prepares to fire for the US presidential race. And storming into the second round, Australians leading the charge on day 2 at Melbourne Park. Good evening, Bridget Rollason with ABC News. It's been revealed Victorian taxpayers have spent $100 million bailing out Tennis Australia post-pandemic and securing the future of the Australian Open. Documents released under Freedom of Information show the state government gave Tennis Australia up to $63 million in 2022, weeks before the organisation posted a surplus of $62 million. It followed a $40 million loan during the height of COVID, which the government later waived. The opposition's questioned the secrecy surrounding the funding bailout.
It's known as the Happy Slam, and it was all smiles on day 1 of the Australian Open yesterday.
We love the relationship we have with the Victorian government. We're hugely appreciative for allowing us to do what we do.
That feeling seems to be mutual. FOI documents obtained by the state opposition show the Treasurer Tim Pallas approved a support payment of up to $63 million to help Tennis Australia pay its bills post-pandemic.
I think the Victorian taxpayer and future Victorian citizens have got the best deal out of our support for Tennis Australia and this tournament.
In 2021 and 2022, Tennis Australia recorded losses in the millions after pandemic restrictions and snap lockdowns disrupted the Open.
All patrons are required to leave the arena now.
It's since bounced back. Just months after receiving its $63 million bailout, Tennis Australia posted a $62 million surplus.
The last year we've done an incredible amount of work in ensuring that we had sufficient funds to launch 2024 and 2025.
This event is commercially viable and stands on its own 2 feet. We don't need to be handing taxpayer money over to commercially viable events.
The secret bailout has been made public as the state struggles to drive down its eye-watering debt, which is projected to reach $177.8 billion by 2027.
If Victoria had been in as strong a financial position as Western Australia, I would still have raised some eyebrows at the scale of the state government's generosity towards Tennis Australia.
What kind of improvements could we have seen to Victorian roads, hospitals, schools with those funds?
The government says it's the price needed to be paid to keep the Australian Open in Melbourne until 2046. If
you average out the economic contribution to about $400 million roundabout every year for the next 10 years, that's $4 billion of economic uplift for Victoria.
Tennis Australia is expecting record crowds during this year's tournament. Leanne Wong, ABC News, Melbourne.
Foreign Minister Penny Wong has departed for a high-stakes trip to the Middle East to advocate for a sustainable ceasefire in Israel and Gaza. The minister is flying to Jordan before heading to Israel, the West Bank and United Arab Emirates. She'll meet with survivors and families of Israeli hostages, but despite growing pressure from the opposition, hasn't committed to visiting the site of the October 7 attack. There are also calls from within the Albanese government to take a firmer stand on Israeli settler violence in the West Bank, including imposing sanctions.
Settler violence in the occupied Palestinian territories must be condemned, and we do so. And in our efforts to use our voice to advocate for a pathway out of this conflict, we have made very clear that one of the priorities must be to avoid regional escalation.
Australia's second largest port operator is calling on the federal government to intervene in an industrial dispute. The company, DP World, claims it's cost the economy more than $1 billion amid growing shipment delays. The government's agreed to a meeting, but it hasn't said if it's willing to step in.
The next batch of fruit at this warehouse might not be so fresh. Joe Saina imports produce, which he says is now perishing in containers at docks across the country.
We've got fresh fruits and vegetables trying to arrive for the Chinese New Year in the first week of February, and they've been held up because of disputes at one of our major stevedores.
Australia's second largest port operator, DP World, is suffering from major disruptions at its port terminals in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and Fremantle because of an industrial dispute with unions.
We've got duopolies and we've got some companies that have a lot of market power, and they've been able to use that monopsony power to keep wages low.
The Maritime Union of Australia wants a 16% pay rise for more than 1,500 workers over 2 years. In a breakthrough for DP World, the union has halted bans on certain shipping lines, but is still going ahead with 2-hour pauses on work. The company says the stoppages have pushed delivery times of some essential items behind by at least 2 to 8 weeks, with a backlog of more than 50,000 containers sitting at Australian ports. Without releasing the economic modelling behind its claims, DP World says since October, the industrial action has cost the economy $1.34 billion.
This additional cost could be passed to the consumers and leading to higher inflation.
DP World wants the government to intervene.
There is a significant amount of industrial action ongoing that rolls over week after week, and that means that we cannot service all our customers.
Industrial Relations Minister Tony Burke will meet with DP World later this week in a push to get the company and the union to reach an agreement as soon as possible. Nassim Khadem, ABC News.
It's a fairy tale story for the ages. An Australian girl who married a prince has today become a queen. Tens of thousands of people lined the streets of Copenhagen to watch Queen Margrethe II hand over the Danish throne to her son, King Frederik X, making his Tasmanian-born wife, Mary Donaldson, Queen Consort of Denmark. And just like the couple's wedding, the fairy tale moment was sealed with a kiss. Europe.
It was meant to be just a simple ceremony, but the crowds arrived on a grand scale. The new king steps onto the balcony of Christiansborg Palace in central Copenhagen. Welcomed by a sea of red and white flags, he's moved to tears. The Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, proclaimed him King Frederik X with a 9-fold salute. In his first public address as monarch, he paid tribute to his mother and said he'd need the support of his Australian-born wife, Mary.
Today, the throne is passed on. My hope is to become a unifying king of tomorrow. It is a task I've approached all my life. It is a task I take on with pride, respect, and great joy.
Moments earlier, Queen Margrethe arrived at the palace, ending her more than 50-year rule on her terms. Signing the instrument of abdication and announcing God save the King. Frederik's much-loved wife Mary is the first Australian to become a reigning queen. The couple were joined briefly on the balcony by their 4 children, including the new heir, Crown Prince Christian. And a final raucous applause for a royal kiss. Among the sea of Danish flags, some cheering Australians.
Aussie, Aussie, Aussie! Oi, oi, oi!
So I'm not sure how far, but we travelled for about 24 hours.
I don't think there's many common Australians that will end up a future king or queen in any country around the world.
I think some people call that the Mary effect. I think it's because it's added a new dimension to the relationship. It's created a sense of admiration and affection between the people of Australia and Denmark.
The couple returning to their royal residence by horse-drawn carriage.
The King and Queen come to the throne with enormous popularity, and there's a great sense of excitement about what this new royal reign will look like.
I've got a champagne bottle and I'm just out here with some friends, just marking the King's Day, the celebration of the King and the royal family.
Fireworks ended a day of festivities celebrating King Frederik X and his Australian Queen.
And Isabella Higgins joins us now from Copenhagen. Isabella, what's next for the King and Queen? Is it straight to royal business?
Well, Bridget, Denmark is waking up to its first full day under the reign of King Frederick X, and things look a little different today at Christiansborg Palace, just a little bit quieter. But there is still one more celebration on the agenda. The King and Queen are due back here shortly for a formal reception with the country's lawmakers. This building also houses the nation's parliament, and inside, the Danish Prime Minister and the Speaker of the House will formally acknowledge the new monarch in the chamber, of course recognising his role as head of state of this constitutional monarchy. And what else can we expect from the royal couple? Well, of course they have lots of interests and causes, and we understand that they're looking to champion those in their new roles, and we expect they'll get to work in the days and weeks ahead.
Thanks, Isabella. Isabella Higgins there in Copenhagen. A man has pleaded not guilty to murder after he was accused of driving dangerously through Melbourne's CBD and crashing into pedestrians and motorists. Police say the actions of 26-year-old Zain Khan left 5 people injured along Burke Street in an incident that also claimed the life of 76-year-old John Haas. In court today, the victim's family watched on as the accused man pleaded not guilty to 9 charges, including murder and attempted murder. Mr Khan repeatedly disrupted the hearing via video link and complained about the conditions he was facing in prison. A magistrate today agreed to fast-track the case. Mr Khan will face the Supreme Court next month. When it comes to maintaining a healthy brain, it's well known that avoiding smoking and having a healthy diet are important. But there are other ways to reduce the risk of cognitive impairment that are less understood, like socialising, getting good sleep, and even hormone replacement therapy for women. Fiona Blackwood reports.
These women are doing 2 things to reduce their risk of dementia as they age.
Turn them over.
The first is challenging their brains with a puzzle.
My grandmother used to do a lot of crosswords as well as the puzzles, and she had a very active brain right up until she passed. So yeah, that is something that's always in the back of my mind, to keep your brain ticking over.
The second is socialising.
If you can actually socialise with other people while doing your puzzles, that you can reduce your anxiety levels.
Socialising is incredibly important for the brain, although we don't really understand how this works. And maybe it's through release of other neurotransmitters in the brain, including oxytocin and dopamine, that enhance brain function longer term.
Deep sleep is important too for activating the glymphatic system, which cleans out toxins from the brain. And a new study has found hormone replacement therapy, taken when menopause symptoms begin, may reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease in women.
So that's something that's cutting edge and obviously needs to be explored in greater detail.
There are other more well-known ways to prevent cognitive degeneration, like daily exercise, a healthy diet and not smoking.
John Moore's mother had dementia.
So she passed away at quite an early age, so it's amazing the effect it has on you, you know. It's a very sad thing. It's sad for the person and very hard for the family.
He's taking part in a study.
So just do it as big, as fast as you can.
Which uses artificial intelligence to pick up subtle changes in a person's movements, which could indicate early signs of neurodegeneration.
Potentially many years before you might develop the obvious symptoms of dementia.
If a risk is identified, participants are encouraged to consider ways to reduce it.
Having a healthy vascular system, so that means physical activity, looking after your blood pressure, obesity and so forth.
Maintaining a healthy brain with age. Fiona Blackwood, ABC News.
Coming up on 7:30 with Laura Tingle, the aftermath of the deadly PNG riots.
We've lost everything.
The entire city was shut up, no businesses, and we saw people, the very people who stole from the shops, and they were suffering as well.
We have to do our best to find out who are behind it.
Also, I'll speak to the former Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, Peter O'Neill.
To the US election, and candidates vying for the Republican presidential nomination are making their final pitches to voters in the state of Iowa. The caucus there is the first big test in the race for the White House, and former President Donald Trump is tipped to hold a massive lead over his rivals. North America correspondent Jade McMillan is in Iowa.
Temperatures below minus 25 degrees Celsius haven't deterred Donald Trump's supporters.
I'm here to see a great man, a man that makes our country the best.
It's a little chilly, but being from Iowa, it's kind of used to it.
The former president is widely expected to easily win the Iowa caucus, the first chance for Republicans to vote on who they want to contest November's presidential election.
Once you set foot in that caucus site, the entire world will be listening to you, and I believe that Iowa is going to speak loud and clear.
His main opponents, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and former United Nations Ambassador Nikki Haley, are likely jostling for second.
We're going to keep on going anywhere and everywhere. We're going to go all the way until the last hour.
Neither candidate is showing any sign of dropping out of the race.
Our voters are very motivated. I think it's very hard to poll an Iowa caucus, period, which the 16 poll was not accurate and predicted, but especially one in negative 20 degrees.
People in Iowa are used to the cold, but this is severe even by their standards. And the caucus rules require voters to show up in person on what will be a freezing night, meaning turnout could be affected.
There's still plenty of vocal anti-Trump sentiment here.
I'm very afraid if he comes back into power. It leaves a lot of uncertainty for how the rest of us are going to fare in this country.
But the results in Iowa could fuel the idea that his campaign is unstoppable. Jade McMillan, ABC News, Indianola, Iowa.
Almost 4,000 people have been evacuated from a town in southwest Iceland after a nearby volcano erupted for the second time in less than a month. The eruption sent lava into a local community and set several buildings on fire.
Iceland has more than 30 active volcanoes, but images like this are rare. This is Grindavik, a fishing town in the country's southwest, under siege from lava.
It's a bit of a weird feeling to see a town being destroyed almost in slow motion at this point.
After a swarm of small earthquakes on Saturday, Grindavik's 3,800 residents evacuated. Just hours later, there was an eruption which opened large cracks in the ground and sent lava snaking towards the community.
Some houses has burned or be buried under the lava, and it's still going quite strong into the town, so we see that the potential damage will be quite much.
Grindavik was first evacuated last November after a series of earthquakes, but residents returned home just before Christmas. Authorities raced to build long defensive walls in case of an eruption, walls that kept the lava out at first.
But then around noon we had a new shock when a fissure opened within the town, and there is lava flowing up from that fissure. Already several houses have gone under lava, so it's a very serious situation.
The government will meet in the next 24 hours to discuss emergency housing for a population who won't be heading home anytime soon. Mazoe Ford, ABC News.
Santos has won a legal battle against a group of Tiwi Island elders, with the federal court ruling the gas giant can resume works on its $5.7 billion Barossa gas project north of Darwin. Last year, Santos was ordered to pause construction of its underwater gas pipeline west of the Tiwi Islands after a group of Tiwi elders argued the company had failed to adequately assess risks to underwater sacred sites. Today, that challenge was dismissed. The gas company can now resume laying the 263-kilometre underwater pipeline to be used for sending gas to Darwin and to be exported as LNG. The Tiwi applicants have also been ordered to pay Santos's legal costs. To finance now, here's David Chow.
Despite a big slowdown in consumer spending, the jobs market is still holding up surprisingly well. The number of jobs being advertised right now is about 36% higher than it was 4 years ago, when COVID didn't even exist. But it's getting a little bit harder to find work, according to analysis from ANZ and Indeed. The number of job ads has dropped 15% over the past year, as the red line shows. Now, this data from Seek also tells a similar story. Manufacturing, hospitality and retail are some of the industries with the most advertised opportunities. But still, the number of job ads in those industries has fallen sharply, like IT and communication, which is down 32% in the past year. Based on this, we can expect the unemployment rate to rise in the coming months. Meanwhile, it was a quiet day for the All Ords, which barely moved. Santos' shares, meanwhile, jumped after it won a federal court case against Tiwi elders who were trying to stop Santos from laying a pipeline near their islands off northern Australia. But the best performers were uranium stocks like Boss Energy and Paladin Energy. It's because the price of uranium surged to its highest level since 2007. And what helped is that more than 20 countries like the US and UK declaring last month they would triple their nuclear energy capacity by the year 2050. Overseas, Japan's stock market hit a fresh 34-year high. And there were big rises for oil and gold, while iron ore prices fell sharply. And finally, the Aussie dollar is buying just under 67 US cents. And that's finance.
In tennis, Australia's Alexei Popyrin has set up a second-round Australian Open clash against defending champion Novak Djokovic. Popyrin's straight sets win over countryman Mark Polmans came on a day of mixed fortunes for local hopes and some shaky moments for the tournament's top seeds.
A storm is brewing at Melbourne Park.
She's done it!
A world number one in doubles, Storm Hunter had never won an Australian Open match as a singles player. Now she's through to the second round.
It's a dream come true. I've been kind of waiting for it for a few years.
Alexei Popyrin has also progressed after outclassing compatriot Mark Polmans in straight sets. His next opponent, Novak Djokovic.
I last played him when I was 19. I've improved since then.
Daria Saville has been knocked out after losing to Poland's Magdalena Frech in a three-set battle. 6'6" Russian Daniil Medvedev made the most of his long limbs. After losing the opening set, Medvedev won the next two, before his opponent Terence Atman was forced to retire hurt.
That might be it.
There was also an early scare for last year's men's finalist.
Now is my time.
Lowly ranked Belgian Zizou Bergs stunned 7th seed Stefanos Tsitsipas in the opening set. The Greek star had to reach into his bag of tricks to get back on track.
Oh, has he made it? Is it legit?
I've seen it, but I do not believe it.
Tsitsipas rallying to win in 4. No such luck for reigning Wimbledon champion Marketa Vondrousova, who was blown away in straight sets by Ukrainian qualifier Diana Yastremska.
Emphatic victory for the qualifier.
So much for no late-night starts. It was almost midnight when defending champion Arina Sabalenka walked out onto Rod Laver Arena. But for the crowd that stayed, the match only lasted 53 minutes. It was a contrasting Grand Slam debut for Dino Prismic. Half the age of Djokovic, Prismic pushed the 10-time champion in 4 grueling sets.
For an 18-year-old, he played so maturely and so confidently on the court.
Tom Maddox, ABC News, Melbourne Park.
And all eyes will be on Rod Laver Arena tonight as Australia's Alex de Minaur steps out in his first round match. Tom Maddox joins me live from Melbourne Park. Tom, de Minaur is in hot form, but how dangerous is his opponent?
Bridge, Milos Raonic is a pretty tricky opponent to get first up. Injury has forced the Canadian veteran to miss a lot of the tour. In fact, he had about a 2-year layoff because of his body failing on him, so there could be a little bit of rust tonight. But he is a former world number 3 and Wimbledon finalist, and he's got a really big game, so he's bullied opponents typically in the past with that big serve of his. These two have met just once, 6 years ago, when Alex de Minaur was just an 18-year-old. De Minaur got up in an upset victory in that match. Of course, De Minaur has come a long way since then, and he's in the strongest form of his career. He had a terrific 2023 and recently 3 wins against top 10 players, including Novak Djokovic. So those results pushed him into the top 10 in the world for the first time in his career. He's never got past the 4th round of his home slam, but he's in the best position to rewrite that record starting tonight. Bridget.
Go De Minaur. Thanks, Tom. Tom Maddox there at Melbourne Park. Australia all-rounder Cameron Green admits he thought he was a 95% chance of opening the batting on his return to the Test team before learning Steve Smith would take the role. Instead, Green will slot in at number 4 for the first Test against the West Indies in Adelaide starting on Wednesday, and he says he couldn't be happier.
The debate surrounding who would open dominated headlines and divided opinions for days. And Cameron Green was convinced he'd be tasked with the role.
Yeah, I thought I was about 95% chance of opening, so that's where my head went for a couple of weeks, and yeah, grateful to be at 4.
Green will return in the position he feels most comfortable in, having been away from the Test side since being squeezed out during the Ashes.
It had been a whirlwind couple of years, and hadn't really had a chance to sit down and think about my own game and where it can go from here. So yeah, there's always a silver lining with not being in the team and having a bit of time in the nets to kind of work on my own game.
The West Indies offered little resistance in last summer's 2 Tests against Australia and have brought an inexperienced squad on this tour, but they insist expectations are high.
We expect to come in and give them a challenge. We're here to win 2 Test matches. We're not just here to play, so we're going to come out here and give it our best.
While this summer's Adelaide Test brings the same opponent, there's a switch from last summer's day-nighter back to the daytime and from December to January. But for the ground staff, the goal is the same.
How do we get a contest between bat and ball and provide a surface for the players to go and hopefully shine on it?
All eyes will be on Smith as one of Australia's most successful Test batters takes on a new role. Blake Kagi, ABC News.
Australian road and time trial champion Luke Plapp says forecast heat will be to his advantage as the men's Tour Down Under gets underway tomorrow. The riders fronted the media in the lead-up to the 144-kilometre first stage in the Barossa Valley. Plapp is up against the likes of 2-time world champion and 6-time Tour de France stage winner Julien Alaphilippe. But the Australian says he'll be better placed to deal with the temperatures in the 30s than those who've just flown in from the European winter. And now with the weather, welcome back to Paul Higgins.
Thank you very much, Bridge. Thank you for that. Well, it was a warm day today, but it has been a pretty mildish summer so far. Usually Melbourne has 8 or 9 days of 35 degrees or more. So far this summer, none, and there's no sign of that kind of heat for the next week. In not so good news, some rain is on the way, but that shouldn't lead to anything like our recent flooding. This morning, some stray showers and thunderstorms popped up in our far north, and this afternoon we've had these showers and thunderstorms mostly around the ranges. As high as 35 degrees today at Mildura, 20 on the beach at Wilson's Prom. It felt a bit sticky around Melbourne with a southeasterly wind, 30.2 degrees in Melbourne City at 5:22 this afternoon. It's now back to 28 degrees, 27 in Geelong. After some weekend scorches, it wasn't quite as hot today in Perth. Parts of Sydney had flash flooding this morning, and it's been stormy in the southeast of Queensland, and this monsoon trough and the low have been bringing some rain and strong winds to the top end at far north Queensland. There is a pressure trough to the west of us. Now, tomorrow that will slowly move into far western Victoria, and the trough will deepen. There it is there. So the instability will increase in our west with showers and thunderstorms tomorrow, and then on Wednesday the trough will cross the state, so those showers and storms will move into central and eastern Victoria. Tomorrow, showers and storms for Brisbane, Canberra and Sydney will have showers. Sunny in Hobart. Adelaide will be hot and partly cloudy, but baking hot in Perth. Back home, showers and thunderstorms in the north and northwest in the morning, becoming widespread in the west during the afternoon, and then on Wednesday they will push across central and eastern parts of the state. It's going to be a mild to warm night and warm to very warm tomorrow under partly cloudy skies. Sunny skies, in fact, across our east in the morning and then partly cloudy and a north to northeasterly breeze. A north and northeasterly wind on the bay that will run at 15 to 20 knots. Strong winds on the central and Gippsland coasts. Well, there are a few storms right now on those hills outside Melbourne. Nothing heading towards the city. Down to a mild 19 tonight, 30 tomorrow. It'll be sunny in the morning, some cloud in the afternoon, a slight chance of a late shower and a fresh north wind, especially in the morning. Wednesday, showers in the morning, early in the afternoon as well. That's when a cooler wind will arrive, 25. Fresh westerly winds Thursday, 22. Friday, 22, a possible shower, and then a partly cloudy weekend. Saturday, 27. Sunday, 24, Bridge.
Thanks, Paul. And that's it for tonight. Laura Tingle is next with 7:30.